Olivia looked like just another janitor. Blonde hair tucked into a cheap cap, mop bucket in her hands. Eyes down. One of the Pentagon security guards smirked and said, "Hey, you missed a spot, janitor." The other guard snatched her ID badge, squinting at it like it offended him. "Olivia Hayes?" he scoffed. "Yeah, right. And I'm the president." Olivia didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She just calmly reached for her badge, but the guard pulled it back and laughed louder. "You know impersonating military personnel is a felony, right?" Then he leaned in and hissed, "You're lucky I don't drag you out right now." And that's when the hallway doors opened. Footsteps, heavy, fast. A Navy SEAL team walked in. Green camo, rifles slung, a K9 beside them. The dog stopped dead, ears up, eyes locked on Olivia. Then the SEAL in front looked at her, froze, and whispered, "Commander," and before Olivia could even turn around. The K9 sat and saluted. "Before we begin, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe because this story gets crazy once the truth comes out." Olivia kept her head down as she pushed the mop bucket down the long Pentagon hallway. The floor was so polished it reflected the ceiling lights like a mirror. Her blonde hair was tucked under a plain janitor cap. Her uniform was loose, faded, and boring on purpose. She looked like someone you'd never notice twice. And that was the point. She moved slow, steady, like she had all day. But her eyes didn't match the job. They were calm in a way that came from training, not cleaning. She stopped at a security door marked "Restricted" and began wiping the metal frame, like she belonged there. Because she did. Just not in the way anyone here would ever understand. "Yo, hey, janitor!" a voice barked behind her. Olivia didn't jump. She didn't even flinch. She turned slowly and saw two Pentagon security officers walking toward her like they owned the hallway. Both were mid-30s, bulky, bored, and full of that lazy power you only get when you think nobody can touch you. One of them smirked as he looked her up and down. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing at the floor right in front of his boots. The other laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. Olivia nodded once and lowered the mop. Not because she was scared, because she was watching, listening, measuring. The first guard leaned closer. "What's your name?" Olivia reached into her pocket and pulled out her badge. The guard snatched it from her hand before she could even speak. "Olivia Hayes," he read out loud, dragging the name like it was a joke. "Yeah, right." He looked at his partner and laughed. "Olivia Hayes? That sounds like a stripper name." His partner chuckled and shook his head. Olivia stayed still. Her fingers tightened around the mop handle for half a second, then relaxed. The guard flipped the badge over and squinted. "This is fake as hell," he said. "And you know what happens when someone walks into federal restricted space with a fake badge?" Olivia's voice was soft. "It's not fake." That was all she said. Just 4 words. But the way she said them made the guard pause for a beat longer than he meant to. Then he recovered and stepped closer, chest out. "Oh, you want to talk back?" he snapped. "Listen, sweetheart, you're lucky we're in a good mood today." He held her badge up like he was dangling keys in front of a dog. "You're not supposed to be anywhere near this corridor, so either you tell me who gave you this, or I drag you out and let someone higher up deal with you." Olivia looked at the badge, then at his eyes, and for a second, her expression changed. Just a crack. Not fear, not anger. Something colder. Like she was remembering a different hallway, a different kind of threat, and a different kind of body bag. The second guard circled behind her like she was a suspect. "You know impersonating military personnel is a felony, right?" he said. "People go to prison for that." Olivia didn't argue. She just slowly reached her hand out again, palm up, like she was asking for something that already belonged to her. The first guard laughed and pulled the badge back. "Nah," he said. "You don't get this back yet." Then he leaned in close enough that Olivia could smell the coffee on his breath. "You want to play tough? Here's tough. You're just a janitor. You clean floors. You don't belong in places like this." His partner laughed again. "Maybe she thinks she's special," he said. "Maybe she thinks she's one of those badass women from the movies." Olivia's eyes dropped for a moment, not because she was ashamed, because she was counting. 2 guards, 1 radio, 1 keyring, 1 weapon on the right hip, 1 on the left. She saw the tiny detail most people missed. The first guard's uniform patch was slightly crooked, like it had been sewn on recently. Too recently. She noticed the way his hand kept touching his earpiece, like he was waiting for a signal. And then she heard it. Faint at first. The sound of boots. Not casual footsteps, not office shoes. Boots. Fast, heavy, controlled. The guards heard it too and straightened up instantly. "Oh, great," one muttered. "Here come the real operators." Olivia didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the badge in the guard's hand. The boot steps got closer. Then the hallway filled with a different kind of presence. 4 men in green camo uniforms, rifles slung, moving like one body. And beside them, muscle, fur, and focus. A military working dog. A German Shepherd K9 with alert eyes and a harness that looked like it had seen war. The guards stepped aside like they suddenly remembered what respect felt like. "Morning, Chief," one guard said quickly, trying to sound professional again. But the SEAL in front didn't even look at him, because the dog had stopped, dead still, ears up, nose working the air like it just found a ghost. Its eyes locked on Olivia. The K9 took 1 step forward, then another. Olivia finally turned her head slightly, just enough for the SEAL team leader to see her face. He was tall, broad, and hard-looking, with that calm violence in his posture that only comes from real combat. His eyes landed on her like a bullet, and all the confidence in his body disappeared in 1 second. He froze so hard it was like time stopped. His lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Then he swallowed, looked at her again, and whispered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear, "Commander." And before Olivia could even answer, the K9 sat perfectly still in front of her and lifted its paw in a trained salute. The hallway went dead quiet. Even the 2 security guards stopped breathing for a second, like their bodies didn't know what to do with what they'd just heard. "Commander?" The word didn't belong in this clean, quiet Pentagon corridor. It belonged on a battlefield. It belonged in a radio call. It belonged in a place where people died. Olivia didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't look proud. She just stared at the SEAL like she was trying to decide if he was real or if her mind was playing tricks on her again. The German Shepherd sat in front of her, perfectly still, like a statue. Paw raised, eyes locked on her face. The dog wasn't playing. This wasn't a cute trick. This was trained respect. The SEAL swallowed again and took 1 slow step forward. "Ma'am," he started, voice rough. Then he stopped himself and glanced at the guards, like he suddenly remembered where he was. The first guard, badge still in his hand, forced a laugh. You guys know her?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked. The SEAL didn't answer him. Instead, he reached out and gently took Olivia's badge from the guard's hand, like it was a weapon the guard wasn't allowed to touch. His fingers didn't shake, but his eyes did. He looked at the badge, then at Olivia, then at the guards. And when he spoke again, his voice wasn't loud, but it was the kind of voice that made grown men stand straighter. "Step away from her." The second guard lifted his hands like, "Whoa, chill. Hey man, we're just doing our job. She was in a restricted corridor with a suspicious badge." Olivia finally spoke, quiet as a whisper. They weren't doing their job. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but it hit the hallway like a slap. The SEAL's jaw tightened. The dog's ears twitched, and the first guard suddenly realized something that made his face go pale. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something else. The SEAL turned slightly, keeping his body between Olivia and the guards. "Commander Hayes," he said, using the name like it was sacred. "I thought you were dead." That was the moment Olivia's eyes changed. For 1 tiny second, the mask slipped. The calm face of a janitor cracked and something darker showed through. Something that didn't belong to a woman holding a mop. Something that belonged to a woman who had watched her whole unit die. "I was," Olivia said. The SEAL stared at her like he didn't know whether to speak or salute again. His team behind him stayed silent, but their posture had changed. They weren't relaxed anymore. They were alert, like they'd just stepped into a classified situation without warning. The first security guard tried to recover. "Okay, look, if this is some military thing, fine, but she still can't be in this corridor without proper escort." The SEAL turned his head slowly toward the guard, and for the first time, he looked at him. Not like a man looks at another man. Like a predator looks at something that just made a mistake. "This corridor," the SEAL said, "is restricted to people with clearance." He lifted Olivia's badge. "This badge," he said, "is higher clearance than yours." The guard blinked. "No, it's not." The SEAL cut him off instantly. "Yes, it is." Then he took one step closer. "And if you ever touch her again," he added, "you'll be lucky if the only thing you lose is your job." The second guard opened his mouth to argue, but the K9 suddenly stood up. Not barking, not lunging, just standing. And that was worse, because the dog's eyes locked on the guard like a warning. One more move, and it's over. The guards backed off without another word. Olivia didn't even look at them anymore. She was looking at the SEAL. His name tape read, Hart. Olivia's lips pressed together. "How do you know me?" she asked. Hart exhaled like he'd been holding that answer for years. "I was in training," he said. "Green Team. My instructor used to tell stories about you, not the movie stuff. The real stuff. The missions nobody talks about." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Who was your instructor?" Hart hesitated, then said it. "Commander Kane." Olivia's face went still. Kane. The name hit her like a bullet she'd never pulled out. The last man who had spoken to her before that classified operation. The last man who had told her, "You're going in alone, Hayes, and if you make it out, you disappear." Hart lowered his voice. "He told us you saved an entire team on a black site extraction, that you carried 2 wounded men out by yourself, that you finished the mission when everyone else was gone." Olivia's hand tightened on the mop handle. Her breathing stayed calm, but her knuckles went white. The SEAL glanced around the hallway again and stepped closer. "Ma'am, I don't think you're supposed to be here as a janitor anymore." Olivia's eyes flicked to the security camera above them, then to the restricted door she'd been cleaning, then back to Hart. "I am exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said. Hart looked confused. "What do you mean?" Olivia leaned in slightly, just enough for only him to hear. "I'm not here to clean floors," she whispered. "I'm here because someone inside this building is trying to kill someone." Hart's eyes widened. Behind him, one of the SEALs shifted his rifle slightly, like his body had already decided this was real. Olivia's voice stayed low. "And those 2 guards?" she added. "They're not just bullies." Hart's face hardened. "What are they?" Olivia looked down the hallway, toward the security checkpoint they'd come from. Then she said the line that made Hart's stomach drop. "They're not Pentagon security," she whispered. "They're planted." Hart stared at her like the whole world had tilted. And right then, like the universe wanted to prove her point, a radio on the first guard's shoulder crackled. A voice came through, distorted and urgent. "Target is confirmed. She's been made. Move now." Hart's eyes snapped to the guards. The guards snapped to Olivia. And the second guard's hand went straight to his weapon. That's when Olivia finally dropped the mop, and the hallway learned the difference between a janitor and a commander. The second guard's hand hit his holster so fast it looked like muscle memory. But Olivia was already moving. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one clean step to the side, her shoulder turning, her body slipping out of the line like water. The guard yanked his pistol halfway out, and the Navy SEAL named Hart slammed him into the wall so hard the hallway camera shook. The gun clattered and spun across the floor. The K9 didn't bark. It did something scarier. It launched forward and planted itself between Olivia and the first guard, teeth bared, eyes burning, a low growl crawling up from its chest like thunder. Olivia didn't even flinch. She looked down at the dog and said one word, soft, "Hold." And the canine froze, perfectly still, like it had been waiting its whole life to hear her voice. Hart stared at Olivia like she'd just pulled a ghost out of the wall. You can command him," he whispered. Olivia's eyes stayed locked on the first guard. "I trained dogs before you grew your first beard," she said. The first guard backed up slowly, hands half raised, trying to look innocent. But his eyes were panicking now, darting to the cameras, to Hart's team, to Olivia's badge in Hart's hand. "Listen," the guard said, forcing a laugh. "This is getting blown out of proportion. We got a radio call." Olivia cut him off, calm and cold. "That radio call wasn't from Pentagon security." Hart's head snapped. "What?" Olivia nodded toward the guard's shoulder radio. "That voice just said target is confirmed. That's not protocol. That's a hit." The hallway went silent again, except for the K9's growl. Then Hart's earpiece crackled. "Hart," a SEAL voice said, urgent. "We just got an alert from Ops. Pentagon internal network just flagged a breach. Someone's spoofing security IDs in Sector C." Hart's eyes narrowed. "Sector C, that's this corridor." Olivia's jaw tightened, and for the first time, you could see it in her face. She wasn't surprised. She was angry, like she'd been waiting for this moment for months. The first guard suddenly bolted. He shoved past the SEALs and sprinted down the hallway toward the stairwell. Hart moved instantly. "Go!" he barked. Two SEALs chased. The K9 lunged after them, but Olivia didn't run. She walked straight to the dropped pistol on the floor and picked it up like she'd done it 1,000 times. No shaking hands, no fear, just control. Hart blinked. "Ma'am." Olivia tossed it back to him, grip first. "That's not the only one," she said. Hart caught it. "What do you mean?" Olivia looked at the second guard, still pinned against the wall, who was breathing hard, eyes wide, realizing the act was over. "You were sent to stop me," Olivia said, voice low. "But you weren't supposed to do it here." The guard swallowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Olivia leaned in close enough to smell his cheap aftershave. "Yes, you do," she whispered, "because your partner just ran, and you didn't." The guard's face twitched, and Olivia smiled, not friendly, the kind of smile that says, "I've seen men like you in places you couldn't survive." "You're here to delay," she said. "He's going to finish the job." Hart's stomach dropped. "Finish what job?" Olivia turned her head toward the restricted door she'd been cleaning, the one she wasn't supposed to be near, the one that led deeper into the Pentagon. "The person they're trying to kill," Olivia said, "is behind that door." Hart's team slowed for half a second, just processing. Then one of the SEALs asked, "Who's behind that door?" Olivia didn't answer right away. Her eyes went distant, like she was staring through time. Then she said the name. "Admiral Cross." Hart froze. Every SEAL in the hallway froze. Because Admiral Cross wasn't just a man. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the building. And if someone was trying to assassinate him inside the Pentagon, that wasn't a crime. That was war. Hart's radio crackled again. "Contact!" one of the chasing SEALs yelled from down the hallway. "He's in the stairwell! He's got a phone! He's calling someone!" Olivia's eyes snapped toward the sound. "Too late," she said. Hart looked at her. "What do you mean, too late?" Olivia's voice dropped. "He's not calling for help," she whispered. "He's calling to confirm." Hart turned and ran for the door, but Olivia stepped in front of him, one hand up. "Stop!" Hart stared at her like she was insane. "Commander, with respect, move." Olivia didn't move. Instead, she leaned closer and said something that made Hart's blood go cold. "If you open that door right now," she whispered, "you'll trigger the secondary." Hart's eyes widened. "Secondary what?" Olivia's face didn't change. "Explosive." Hart's whole body locked. The SEALs behind him raised rifles, scanning the ceiling, the corners, the vents. "Bomb?" one whispered. Olivia nodded once. Not big. Not to level the Pentagon. Just enough to kill everyone in that doorway. Hart swallowed hard. How do you know? Olivia looked him dead in the eyes. Because I planted one just like it, she said. 10 years ago. In a foreign embassy. Hart's throat went dry. The hallway camera watched them. The K9 growled, and Olivia stepped past Hart and crouched by the door, listening like she could hear the building breathing. Then she reached into her janitor cart and pulled out something that didn't belong there. A small black pouch. A wire kit. A tiny handheld scanner. Hart stared. You're not a janitor, he whispered. Olivia didn't look back. I'm not undercover to protect the Pentagon, she said. Her voice was flat. I'm undercover because the Pentagon is compromised. And as she slid the scanner under the door seam, the device beeped once, then twice, then it screamed, because the explosive wasn't on the other side of the door, it was inside her cart. Olivia's eyes snapped up, and in the reflection of the polished floor, she saw someone standing behind them. A third security officer. Not on the roster, not wearing a body cam, and smiling. Olivia stood slowly, turning her head just enough to see him, and the man said softly, Commander Hayes, you should have stayed dead. Then he raised his gun. The gun came up like it was already decided. The fake security officer didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just aimed at Olivia's chest with the calm of someone who'd practiced this moment 100 times. Hart's seals moved at the same time. One stepped in. Another swung his rifle up. The K9 exploded forward, teeth bared. Down! Olivia snapped. Not loud, not panicked, just a command, and the dog stopped mid-lunge like it hit an invisible wall, dropping low, ready, but holding. That one detail made the assassin's eyes flicker, because he didn't expect a janitor to control a war dog. He expected fear. Olivia gave him none. Don't do it, Hart warned, voice hard. You pull that trigger, you're not walking out. The man smiled anyway. I'm not here to walk out. And then Olivia saw it. His finger wasn't on the trigger. It was on a tiny remote in his palm. A detonator. Her cart. The one with the scanner screaming. The bomb wasn't meant for the Admiral. It was meant for her. Olivia's mind went ice cold. Not because she was scared. Because she understood the whole setup in 1 second. They used you as bait, she said quietly, looking at Hart. Hart's eyes widened. What? Olivia didn't explain. She moved. One clean step, then another, her mop bucket rolling as she shoved the cart sideways with her hip, sending it crashing into the wall. The assassin's thumb slammed the detonator, and nothing happened, because Olivia had already ripped the battery pack loose in the same motion. Hart stared like he'd just watched a magic trick. The assassin's smile vanished. For the first time, he looked nervous. Who trained you? He hissed. Olivia's eyes went dead calm. The people you're trying to erase, she said. Then Hart's K9 finally barked. One sharp blast, and the sound echoed down the Pentagon corridor like a warning shot. The assassin fired. The bullet sparked off the marble wall, close enough that dust hit Olivia's cheek. But Olivia didn't flinch. She stepped into him, not with rage, with precision. Her hand trapped his gun wrist, twisted, and the weapon dropped like it weighed nothing. Then she hooked his leg and slammed him to the floor so hard his breath left his body in one ugly sound. Hart's seals piled on him instantly. Zip ties, knee to shoulder, weapon secured. In less than 3 seconds, the threat was done. The corridor went quiet again, and then Olivia heard it. The soft beep of a radio, a voice, distant and calm. Package failed. Move to extraction. Hart turned, furious. He's not alone. Olivia nodded. He never was. She stepped over the man and looked down at him. You're working for someone inside, she said. The assassin coughed and smiled through pain. You think you're the only ghost in this building? Olivia's jaw tightened, because the worst part was, he was right. A door opened behind them. A small group of higher security stepped out, Real ones this time, along with a man in a dark suit. Older. Sharp eyes. The kind of posture that didn't belong to civilians. Hart stiffened. "Admiral Cross," Hart said instantly, standing straighter. The Admiral's gaze went right past Hart, right past the SEALs, right to Olivia. And for one long second, he just stared at her like he was seeing a memory he didn't want to believe. Then his face changed. Not shock. Something heavier. Something like guilt. "Commander Hayes," Admiral Cross said quietly. Olivia didn't salute. She didn't smile. She just looked at him like a woman who'd been carrying a coffin inside her chest for years. "You knew they'd come," she said. The Admiral's mouth tightened. "Yes." Hart's eyes snapped between them. "Wait. You two know each other?" Olivia's voice stayed flat. "He signed the order that got my team killed." Silence hit the corridor. Even the SEALs looked uncomfortable. The Admiral didn't deny it. He didn't hide behind rank. He just nodded once. "I did," he said, "and I've regretted it every day since." Olivia took one slow breath. "I didn't survive because I was lucky," she said. "I survived because I finished the mission, alone, and I buried every one of them in my head, because I wasn't allowed to bury them in public." Hart swallowed hard. The K9 sat beside Olivia now, watching her like it understood every word. The Admiral stepped closer, voice lower. "You were never supposed to be here as a cleaner," he said. "You were here because we got intel that someone inside was planning an internal strike, and there was only one person I trusted to move unseen." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "You mean the person you already threw away?" The Admiral held her gaze. "Yes," he admitted. Then he looked at Hart. "And you, Lieutenant, your team was not assigned to this hallway by accident either." Hart stiffened. "Sir?" The Admiral's voice turned sharp. "Because I needed SEALs here, to witness who she really is." Hart looked back at Olivia, the same woman they'd watched get bullied. The same woman who'd been called a janitor. The same woman who just disarmed a killer and stopped a bomb without even raising her voice. And Hart did something he didn't even think about. He stepped forward and saluted her, full and clean. The kind of salute you give to someone you'd follow into hell. His SEALs did it too. Even the K9 sat taller, like it felt the respect in the air. Olivia didn't return it right away. Her throat moved once, and for the first time, you could see the crack in her armor. Not weakness, grief. Because salutes are nice, but they don't bring people back. The Admiral cleared his throat. "We've detained the attacker," he said. "But we still have a bigger problem. Whoever sent him is still inside this building." Olivia's eyes hardened again. "Then stop hiding," she said. "Stop burying it. Stop pretending." Hart stepped closer. "Commander, what do you want us to do?" Olivia looked at him, then at the SEALs, then at the K9, and finally, at the Admiral. "I want you to do what you should have done years ago," she said. "Stand with your people." The Admiral nodded once, and then, right there in the hallway, he did something no one expected. He took off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and said, "Then let's finish what they started." Later, when the building was locked down, when the traitor was finally pulled out of a conference room in cuffs, when the news was still hours away from knowing anything, Olivia stood alone for a moment in the quiet. Hart walked up slowly, careful like he was approaching someone wounded. "You really were a commander," he said. Olivia gave a small nod. Hart hesitated. "Why did you take the janitor job? You could have disappeared anywhere." Olivia's eyes stayed on the floor. "Because if they can compromise the Pentagon," she said, "then nowhere is safe." Hart looked at her, voice softer. "And because you couldn't stop serving." That hit. Olivia's mouth tightened. She didn't deny it. She just reached down and scratched the K9 behind the ear. The dog leaned into her hand like it had been waiting years for someone like her. Hart swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said, "for what they did to you, for what we did to you." Olivia finally looked up, and her eyes weren't cold anymore. They were tired. "I'm used to being underestimated," she said quietly. Then she paused. "And I'm used to being alone." Hart's voice came out rough. "You're not alone anymore." Olivia held his gaze for a second. Then she nodded once, and for the first time in the whole story, she let herself believe it. If you felt something reading this, if you felt that lump in your throat, that anger, that respect, that ache, please don't scroll away like it meant nothing. Subscribe. Seriously. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that some heroes don't wear medals anymore. Some are cleaning floors, so some are surviving quietly, and some are still fighting battles nobody can see. So if you want more stories like this, stories with heart, honor, and that kind of comeback that hits you in the chest,